listen to me carefully. Messages don't change people's lives. The Holy Spirit does. If you don't work, you become lazy.
Sure.
And lazy is a cousin to sexual immorality too. That's a different conversation for a different day. But put your hand to work and go worship the Lord.
What is a reflection of poor leadership?
The idea that we're trying to...
Welcome into the Kingdom Come podcast. On this episode, we are joined by a special guest, Cole Lusby. Cole Lusby was the campus pastor at UL Chi Alpha when I was a student and also when I was on staff over there. Something about Cole is the best leader I've ever been able to see work in person. When he was pastoring at UL Chi Alpha, he was also leading multiple businesses, flipping houses, and he had a way of delegating, but also empowering those around him. Cole is a man full of deep wisdom and knowledge about who God is and how we can live a life that honors the Lord. I believe this episode will bless you. But first, if this is your first time listening to the Kingdom Come podcast, or maybe you've been listening all along, I want to say thank you. But also, man, would you please consider, if you're here on YouTube, like the video, subscribe. But if you're listening on audio, would you just take one moment and go press following, and even, man, please leave a 5-star review. It means the world to us so that we can get this show out to more people. So enjoy this episode with our good friend, Cole Lusby.
Cole, I was so excited. I love to have you as my campus pastor. It was so encouraging to have somebody younger, somebody I could relate to.
Yeah.
And then you leave. You know, you leave and then you go and start this business. And, well, your business already started, but you're making your business grow. And so to me, as a student who served under you, I felt like you left Chi Alpha, you left pastoring ministry for the money. Like, what do you have to say about that?
Leaving ministry for the money.
You heard me?
You heard me?
Somebody got to make it.
I think there's a presupposition in that question of presuming that there is more ministry happening in the church than in the business.
Ooh.
But my name is Cole Lusby. We'll circle back to that in a moment. I'm excited to hang with you guys, man.
Well, we're excited to have you, you know?
Yeah. Thank you for making time out of your busy schedule just to, make time.
Hey, you guys are the ones who drove into Lafayette, so thank you for coming this way.
Okay. Yeah, we didn't do it for you, but no,
true. It's true.
I would have. But we didn't.
Yeah.
I just want you to know that.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of layers to why the Lord was moving me on out of a pastoral role. I think it's layered. I think I'll say this. This might actually surprise you. I'm making less money now than I was 3 years ago pastoring.
Cap.
Real talk. My wife is a witness.
Okay.
Now, I'm not suggesting that money's coming from, pastoring, okay? You got to contextualize my life, if you will, you know? But as a family, all income considered, we're making less money today than we were 3 years ago. As a family, we have more sacrifice today than we did 3 years ago.
Why is that?
Because, well, it's layered. I would say, and for those who don't know me, don't understand this, but I've had a couple other businesses, side hustles that I've stopped doing.
Real estate. Are you still doing marketing?
No.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You sold it?
No, just closed it.
Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah. So not doing marketing, not doing real estate.
You're just doing
So income
windows and
drops,
doors.
right?
Gotcha.
But I feel like, in addition to that, I think, so that's just kind of a side note to answer the question directly. But in addition to that, I do believe that leaders of the church, including myself in the past, have valued the role of the microphone more than they valued the influence of a person in their everyday life. Let me ask you a question. Who has more influence? A pastor of a church or a physician who sees 30 patients a day?
Who actually has more influence?
Who has more opportunity for influence?
Who has more opportunity? The physician, I guess.
For sure.
But rather, we encourage people to seek and fulfill a full-time ministry role, exclusively pastoring, right? And we forget that God's called people to shepherd in their every day of life.
And I definitely see that because even with me growing in my faith as I went from a freshman to sophomore and growing, and I see my friends start to notice a change in me, and they're like, oh, you're going to be a pastor. And granted, I do feel like that is a calling on my life.
Right.
But for you to just assume being sold out for Christ.
That's right.
Equals
you have
being
to
a
be in
pastor.
ministry.
It's
That's
like
right.
there's something wrong there as far as people's like presumptions about living for God. The only reason you have to live for God with your whole soul is to be a pastor. And if
minister,
not,
yeah.
you're doing less.
And we do altar calls to become pastors.
But we don't do them to be doctors.
I've never seen them for teachers.
Huh.
Yeah.
You know? So I just think we forget Paul worked and made money. You know? We forget Peter had a successful business. We forget about these things.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
We forget Jesus' entire ministry was funded by a few wealthy people. Did they just like do ministry full time?
You see, in my ministry is funded by a few wealthy people. One of them sitting up to my right, wearing a Raging Cajun shirt.
So goofy. No,
Oh, wait, that's you!
What I'm trying to say is actually it's a reflection. I don't mean this as an insult
Yeah.
because I had to do some self-reflection here as well. It's a reflection of poor leadership.
What is a reflection of poor leadership?
The idea that we're trying to empower those up front instead of desiring to see others have success.
So do you feel like it's because leaders are trying to push themselves forward rather than
Certainly, possibly. That's not really what I think the motivating factor is. I don't think, a leader's intent is to get me up front, but a leader has to consider, what am I doing to help influence the people in the room to do more? We can't just be like, okay, leadership equals pastoring, and good leadership equals getting on front and being able to communicate. And this is no. Good leadership says, you who work, as an administrator at the university or whatever you do, like, what is it that God's asking you to do more of in your everyday that you're currently not doing? That's good leadership.
So when did because you even said like you once thought that way. So when did
Right.
your philosophy change? What changed your philosophy on leadership and specifically like Christianity leadership?
It began during pastoring.
Okay.
At one point, I prioritized the numbers at our large group gathering and the hands that were being raised over the people doing the work of the ministry. That shifted probably after a couple of years, going from, and listen, I think we always, even credit where credit's due, Eric Trull and UL Chi Alpha has always had a powerful small group ministry. But for me, I felt even early on in my tenure, it was still for me, a ministry with small groups.
Not a ministry of.
Not a ministry of small groups. And that's just a line to say I became more interested in helping a student, in this particular case, a student do what God's asking them to do.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say, so what's the difference? You know what I'm saying? Because I feel like this is the closest model I've seen to being a ministry that's built on small groups. Like, what do you think is the difference between saying that you're built on small groups and a church or a body of believers genuinely being like centered around small groups?
Yeah, I think this is a really healthy, strong model, and I think there needs to be more models to follow it. That's where I really first begun kind of considering, man, what is it for someone to own what God's asking them to do, not just to do what I'm asking them to do. So to me, that's a big component, and I think wise leaders are trying to answer the question, how do I get someone else to go and excel at what God's asking them to do? And I think UL Chi Alpha has done a phenomenal job at doing that. I'm not saying they haven't. I think they have done a phenomenal job at doing that. But that when I began leading and pastoring here at UL Chi Alpha, that's where it became reality for me. It didn't become reality for me when I stepped out of ministry. I don't feel like
So you're saying you didn't leave for money?
That's right.
So what'd you leave for?
Surprisingly, I believe the Lord is setting me up for greater influence down the road.
And what?
And influencing our employees, our vendors, our customers, and other business leaders. I don't think I have the full picture, but I do believe that the Lord's setting me up for more influence down the road.
Was it hard to step away? Because I feel like it's you never really hear about it like you know what I'm saying? You came in at a young age and then you also left at a young age. You know what I'm saying? I feel like oftentimes when pastors when they're in it, they're like tenure. You know, like they're in it until they die or they do something wrong. You know, oftentimes is that
Until they sleep with someone else's wife.
you know what I'm
Right,
saying? Like that's
right.
oftentimes, and it's like, nah, you left when the ministry was healthy.
When it was arguably maybe at its healthiest.
You know, and it's
Yeah.
like, and you did that, and you left. So like, was that difficult for you, or like, what was that process like mentally and like emotionally having to walk through that?
Yeah. First thing, everybody probably has an opinion. This is opinion of how I perceive things, you know? Not that it's a right way to look at it. But it was definitely difficult and challenging for us because, I mean, there were times like, man, I'm stepping out of ministry. Lord, is this really what you're asking me to do? Like, isn't this the wrong thing to do? Wait, I'm going to go from preaching every week to not
Say,
preaching?
but that was my influence, is
Right.
the microphone.
Right. And I think, no, I felt like the Lord was like, yes, this is the next step for you. And certainly there were many days of, are we sure about this? You know, it wasn't motivated by, I gotta get out. It was not the motivation, you know, but, and I think most people didn't see that internal torment, to be honest.
I think that makes sense, though, because it's like, okay, you had to put down the microphone, but I don't remember one sermon you preached.
Yeah.
But I remember many of the conversations we had, and I can look at the impact of my life that you had.
Listen to me carefully.
I'm listening.
Messages don't change people's lives. The Holy Spirit does.
Yeah.
And I've seen the Lord do more in someone's life after a poor message from my own personal experience than I have from a good message. So I just think we overvalue the microphone.
Yeah.
And I think we overvalue the stage.
Who's we?
That's a good question. When I say we, I'm saying just kind of Christian culture honors the microphone more than it should.
Is it just Christian culture, though? I feel like that's just society.
Yeah, that's a good point to make. Yeah.
Because it's like, I mean, even in the business world, people want to hear what those, they have a microphone on Instagram, so now they have a voice, and now whatever they say is valid. But, bro, there's some freaking garbage on the internet.
Yeah.
And like, but since they have a microphone, we respect their opinion, and they have influence in our life, which is why influencers are now Instagram figures, not your neighbor.
Yeah, you make an interesting point here that I do think culture values the person up front. And I'm not sure that was Jesus's ministry philosophy.
Not sure, or are you saying it's not?
I'm saying it's not.
Okay.
You know, and I think, you know, we see certainly the first will be last and the last will be first. And we can see throughout Scripture, Jesus looked to serve others and you know, invest his life into a few faithful men. We could go on and on and on.
For sure.
But, you know, he didn't, I don't believe he chased crowds and microphones, you know?
But typically, like in today's culture, like the leader is the one with the microphone. So it's like, I wouldn't say that that's wrong, you know, for, you know, to be a leader in a microphone and to have those opportunities. Somebody needs to do it. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like they can still be done in a healthy way. So like, what is wrong with it? I guess like, what does it go wrong? Or what's the healthy balance within it? Like not pursuing the microphone, but somebody has to preach the message. You know what I'm saying?
Certainly, yeah. I think it's when you value that over the contribution of equipping the saints to do the work of the ministry. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, Ephesians makes this pretty clear.
Well, because it's like we always
know?
say that we are the church,
Right.
but we don't operate that way. That church operates still as come listen to the pastor preach and then go home. Mm-hmm. But it's very little actually, okay, now this is how you can practically be the hands and feet of Jesus.
Yeah, let's go back to the example of influence between a pastor and a physician. I mean, what if a physician invites every one of his patients every day for a quick prayer? Just ask them, can I pray for you today? Uh-huh. What if that physician then begins writing each week, each Sunday, let's presume before their week of work, they write out with 30 times, 150 notes with a scripture on it and hands it to each person after they pray. What if on the back of that card is an opportunity to get connected to a local body or a few local bodies? Do you see what I'm doing here? Like I'm prioritizing the work of the ministry for the physician.
Yeah.
Right.
As opposed to, you know, make sure you open the front door at church on Sunday and, you know what I'm trying to say? And you know, you support the, local work. It's like, that's important. No one's saying preaching's not important. Mm-hmm. I'm saying the work of the saints is a little bit more important. And that's why there's passion and conviction there, because there's not enough people saying that.
No, and I think that workplace ministry is definitely devalued. Like,
Yeah.
for sure. Like,
It's almost like when you left Chi Alpha, it was kind of like, oh.
right. People are like, yeah, oh yeah, you left Chi Alpha, so it's like, oh, so you're not doing ministry anymore? And it's like,
Right.
No, I'm gonna do ministry at my job, just wherever I'm at, and it's not as pretty, it's not as attractive. You know, I don't like have the numbers that people have. My conversations look a lot different than other people's. That sometimes I have to minister to somebody for 4 years, whereas say you're in Chi Alpha, man, you meet somebody in the morning at class, you have lunch with them, and then they come to life group that same night and get saved that Thursday. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the type of stuff that can happen on this college campus. But in workplace ministry, it looks a lot
different.
More different.
A lot different, for sure. I agree with that. And I think the ministry model's developed. Doesn't need more developing, per se. Meaning, church, there's a lot of effort, energy, and people investing into making sure the Sunday morning experience works really well.
Right.
I think I can make a compelling case that the marketplace ministry is underdeveloped. What does it look like to share my faith with coworkers?
Whose job is it to develop that?
The leaders.
Okay.
The leaders of the church.
Right.
And you feel like the sign, because you kind of said at the beginning, it's like that there's been poor leadership within the church as a broad term.
Not every church,
That's what I'm saying, the broad term
Yeah.
of like, there's a lot of poor leadership in the church because it's focusing on the microphone. So you're saying that strong leadership from the pulpit would look like equipping
Strong
you
leadership.
to reach people with windows.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Strong leadership prioritizes me in my particular trade I met, this is a true story, maybe a couple months ago, I was in a home of a widow. And she shared and sharing how she's got this big, beautiful house and her husband's not there anymore. He's passed, and her kids have moved off, and she's left at the end of her life with a material good that does her no value. And I was able to pray with her, encourage her, share scripture with her, and that is real ministry.
Yeah.
And I think that good leaders desire to see others succeed.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's pretty, it makes sense. It's really simple, but you don't feel like that happens?
Certainly, I'm not saying
Well, no, not that it doesn't happen. I'm saying
Yeah.
you feel like there are times that doesn't happen. That
Let me give a big old disclaimer to both of you. I think a lot of this is happening, and I
Yeah.
think this is a good thing.
For sure.
I think it needs to be done more often and to a higher degree of excellence than maybe currently being done. There needs to be more focus on developing small group leaders in churches, right? There needs to be more focus on developing people doing the work of the ministry in their workplace, doing the work of the ministry in their home. I mean, how many parents are doing devotionals with their kids?
Yeah. Not many.
Come on.
Yeah,
It's
let's
a symptom
talk
of
about it.
bad
Let's talk
leadership.
about
We
it.
can pretend like it's not. It's a symptom of bad leadership.
Yeah.
No, we need to be developing people in ministry, not just doing ministry on a Sunday morning. So I'm not trying to suggest that we do a bad job.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying at all.
Just that we can do a better one.
I just think there's more out there that the Lord has for us.
because somebody could listen to this conversation and just assume that we're having a conversation about pastoring. We're just talking
Right.
about like pastoral leadership can improve, and it's like, no, we're all leaders.
That's right.
Because we all have influence over someone in our lives. Regardless to how great the influence is up to us, and we will allow the Holy Spirit to do in us. But we all are leaders to a certain capacity. You know what I'm saying? Some lead people more as far as like masses,
Right.
But we all have an opportunity to minister right where we are doing what we're already doing. We don't have to go to church. We don't have to serve on this serve team at a church in order to do ministry. That it's simple as, man, inviting somebody over to have a meal.
That's right.
And then because
Yeah.
Christ is just such a big part of your life, Jesus comes out.
That's right.
And that's
ministry.
Yes, that's
That's
the
ministry.
true
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
Jesus did.
That's right.
There's more. You see more instances of Jesus having these one-on-one conversations, spending this intentional time with disciples, than preaching. He did do the Sermon on the Mount, and there was time and place for
Well, he
those types of
definitely
things.
preached, yeah.
Right.
He definitely preached, but majority of his ministry was done in small groups and one-on-one conversations that he had with people.
You said it better than I could. Yeah.
So-
No, seriously.
Yeah.
That's the message that comes from good leadership.
Yeah.
Eric Trull in your life, other good leaders in your life, develop that in you, you know? And you need to see that happen more often. That's what I'm trying to say.
You are easily, I think you would be the best leader I've ever worked with in terms of like.
What a compliment.
Yeah, of course. Because it's like, okay, you were leading the ministry, you were leading multiple other businesses, and it did not feel like any of them were a burden, and all of them were operating well and healthy. So what are some like elements, aspects of healthy and good leadership in an individual that the people listening to this can actually implement into their lives?
I do believe leaders ought to remain calm in the midst of chaos. I think there is wisdom throughout Scripture. I would always pray this at the end of my message at a Thursday Night Live, and I'm curious to see if you even remember me saying this. I would say, Lord, you love this ministry more than I do, and this ministry belongs to you. Meaning,
I've never heard him say that.
Yeah, meaning, it should be a line in there. Meaning, when I was pastoring, this did not belong to me. This belonged to the Lord.
Yeah.
We're stewarding it.
My business doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the Lord. I may own 100% equity in the company,
Yeah.
Sure.
but it's not mine.
Yeah.
Everything I have in my life is not mine. I've been bought and paid for at a price. It doesn't belong to me.
That sounds good. And I can say that. And people can say that very easily, but what's the difference? Because, I can say, oh, yeah, this is not mine. This is the Lord's. But still.
Deep in your heart, you have to be able to say, truthfully, if my ministry falls apart in the next 30 days and everyone leaves, then what? If you cannot answer that question, you have not surrendered your ministry to the Lord, or you have not surrendered your business to the Lord.
Bro, because that's so crazy you say that, because I was struggling with teaching, and I've been dealing with a lot of adversity with teaching, and I don't know if the Lord's pulling me out of teaching or what's happening. And I was like, Lord, you can't pull me out of teaching. Like, people on the podcast know I gave up chemical engineering to be a teacher because I felt like God called me to be a teacher. It doesn't make sense. And then I'm like, bro, what am I? If I'm not a teacher, like, what am I gonna do? I gave up everything to do this, Lord. Why would you take this away from me? Or like, how am I supposed to feel about this? And I realized, like, I'm so much more than a teacher. You know what I'm saying? I'm so much more.
You're a podcaster.
You know what I'm saying? Like, but it's like, I'm so much more than the things that I do. Man, I'm a child of God. And if I'm not content with that being the essence of who I am, then something's wrong there.
You use a word there, content. I think when you've surrendered your life, hopefully your businesses and whatever, your job, for example, if you're listening, you got a full-time job and you're constantly worried about what if I get fired, or what if the company goes under, or what if this, it's a sign of a lack of contentment.
Yeah.
The Lord's going to take care of you. If he can take care of the birds in the air, surely he can take care of you.
Yes.
And I just think we've grasped, and here we go, using we again. Sometimes people have grasped at what's in front of them and hold too tightly onto it,
sure.
And it's like, man, let go. Like, it belongs to the Lord. There ought to be contentment in your heart. And when that happens, there's a lack of anxiety in your heart.
Oh, yeah.
And when there's a lack of anxiety, you are calm in the midst of chaos.
For sure.
So you're saying anxiety oftentimes is caused by trying to possess what is in front of us?
I do believe anxiety is self-inflicted that comes from a lack of contentment.
You probably just pissed a few people off.
Well, I'm just saying, I mean...
Right, because they have chemical imbalances and stuff like that when it deals with mental health.
Yeah, there are rare cases.
Okay.
Where people have
rare
cases where people have chemical imbalances.
For sure.
Yeah. But, I mean, it's a pretty Western problem. Yeah.
Hey, when you put it...
I mean, we go to third world countries that don't have, and they're content with not having.
Yeah.
Seems like they don't really struggle with anxiety.
But,
what do I know?
So, it just absolves him of everything he said.
What do I know? I'm just an idiot on a podcast.
That's it. I do think that we need to seriously address contentment in our hearts, and I think it's correlated somehow, some way to anxiety.
Well, it definitely is, because it's like, I mean, people, especially in America, like we're all guilty of it at times, is we're not content with what we have. And like when you said, like, if the thing in front of you, ministry, whatever it might be, goes away, are you going to be content?
right.
Are you going to be okay? And it's like, I think anyone would like to say, oh yeah, of course.
Right.
But like in reality, it's kind of be like, oh frick, it's going away. What I know, my life as I know it is vanishing, which causes anxiety, which means if it's causing anxiety, you are clinging to that rather than actually clinging to what's important, which is Christ.
What if it all goes away? What if your life goes away?
Like, what if I die?
What if you're
Can't
no?
be
That's not what I mean.
anxious.
Sorry. No, good.
Okay.
What if your job goes away? What if everything
House,
goes away?
wife, kids.
You file for bankruptcy. The bank comes after your house. You don't have any money in your bank account. It's you and your wife homeless, living with your parents. What if it all goes away? Is there contentment in your heart? Not that you're satisfied.
Genuinely, probably not.
That's what I'm saying.
May not be satisfied.
Not that you're satisfied, and not that this is a different conversation for a different day in terms of drive, ambitions, godly. I mean, that's a different conversation for a different day.
Because you're a driven guy. Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully, and I think it's godly, you know. And but I think sometimes we just what happens if it all goes away? Is there deep, sincere peace of Christ?
Even if you die, like
All be gone anyways.
yeah, like Paul,
Well, that's what Ecclesiastes is all about.
Right.
It's like you are chasing wind.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, and then Paul, to live is Christ, to die is gain. It's like, bro, like, and that really helped me. Like, honestly, like I said, like I was struggling with the schools. It's like, well, I guess the worst thing in theory that could happen to me is death. Like most people say, like that's one of the worst things that could happen to them, to your physical body. And
Is
like,
that poor theology?
huh?
Is that poor theology?
What you mean?
that death is the worst thing that
Death is the worst thing that could happen to you.
You know, and it's like
Because proper theology would be the best.
I get the.
I'm not sure.
You know what I'm saying? It's like I get
It doesn't quite
and, like,
seem right.
I get to gain Christ. Like I get to spend eternity with Christ
Right.
that much sooner. Like
Right. Streets of gold.
there's definitely worse things, you know? And it's
Yeah.
like when you put it into perspective, it's like, man, I could lose my job. I could go bankrupt. I could, you know what I'm saying? All these bad things could happen to me that could definitely cause anxiety in my life. But it's like, bruh, I still have God at the end of the day and the hope for heaven and eternity with him. And that should definitely spark contentment within our hearts for sure.
1,000% well said.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think a characteristic, to answer your question, of good godly leaders is they're at peace with Christ and they're calm despite what's happening around them.
And because at the end of the day, we're all leaders of, at bare minimum, our life.
Certainly.
And so it's like,
Yeah.
if we're leading a business, do we have anxiety in the midst of storms, or do we have calm? If we're in our life, do we have anxiety in the
Right.
midst of hardship, or do we have calmness, contentment, and peace? And so that's what you're ultimately saying is when we lead our life and lead whatever it is we find ourselves leading well, we will find ourselves calm in the midst of a storm. What happens if you're not? How do you like center yourself in contentment in Christ rather than the way that the world has taught us in our possessions?
Well, I'll say this. It's better to be honest with yourself than to fool yourself.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
You know, it's better to be honest that you're not calm in the storm you're in than to presume that you are, and deep here in your soul, you're tormented.
I told my students, you can lie to me, or you just don't lie to yourself.
That's right.
You know what I'm
That's
saying? Don't lie
right.
to yourself, but
Yeah.
keep it a buck with yourself at least.
Yeah, that's good. And I think there needs to be an ongoing process for you as a believer, a process. I don't think it happens quickly. I don't think it happens overnight, but some sort of process for the Lord to strip away. I think the Psalm says, strip away all that remains, you know, and to discover peace with the Lord. You know, I'm not suggesting that's a quick process or that it's just intuitive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think for every person, it's a different path. I really do, you know? I think some people may take years to walk through that. Some people maybe weeks, you know? But I think ultimately it's there has to be a posture of submission.
So do you feel like you've accomplished this in your life? Like do you feel like you're content even if everything went away?
Yes.
And so
That sounds crazy.
Yeah, I
but-
know, because like I'm gonna push back just because wouldn't it be easy for you to say you have a lot of money, you have a nice family, you have a big house, you have a really fancy truck now. Your truck used to suck, but now now it's not, like you have all these things. So it's easy for you to say you would be content if you don't have it. How do you know that you will be?
I don't know, man. I think the Lord knows my heart. It's a deep, heartfelt posture. I'm not trying to say I'm perfect. Don't misunderstand. I'm not trying to say that there's not waves that come and go, you know, of you know, a few days of angst because of, you know, this situation, or, you know, I said the wrong thing to this person that upsets me for, you know. I'm not trying to say that, you know, I'm perfect. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But yeah, I certainly feel content at where the Lord has me with Him.
Yeah,
and with my family.
So what are the symptoms of a content life in the life of a person?
Yeah. You're not trying to buy the nicest thing. You're not chasing material things, clothes, watches, whatever.
Shoes,
You know,
yeah,
thank you.
whatever,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeezys on.
Someone who doesn't want a bigger house. Someone who...
Bro, your bathroom is bigger than my living room.
Someone who... I love this dude, bro. I love this dude. Someone who's just not chasing the next thing.
Yeah.
Even in their own career. You know, I mean, just not always looking for the next thing.
Yeah.
Now, and that's
You
so
know?
like normal for people to do. Like everybody asks me, "Oh, you're a teacher, so like you want to be a principal one day?"
Right,
It's
of
like,
course. Yeah.
I'm like, no, I actually don't want to be a principal. And they're like, so what? Oh, you're good at teaching, and you're so good with the kids. You'd be a great principal and a leader of leaders. And I was like, somebody got to teach the kids. What if everybody wanted to be principals?
Yeah.
Kids would not be taught. You know what I'm
Right,
saying? It's like,
right.
and that somebody has to be willing to submit and do the dirty work. Austin and I, we used to debate a little, like, oh, it was like a funny thing. I don't know how you ever felt about it, but we were talking about when we used to be roommates, and then how we both felt called to be pastors. And I'd be like, oh, like you're gonna be my associate, and I'm gonna be the lead pastor.
You
And
would
then-
say the opposite.
no, at first I wouldn't.
Oh, yeah.
At first I'd be like, okay, you'll be my associate. And then
Yeah.
you joke with me and be like, no, you be my associate. And then I really felt like the Lord humbled me, and He like slowed me down and like allowed me to be content with who I was. And I was like, man, Austin would be a better lead pastor than me. I should want to serve under him in that regard, and to humble myself to be like, you know what? I want to be your associate. You know what I'm saying? And I'm okay with that.
That makes me so uncomfortable.
I'm happy. I'm happy it does. I'm really happy.
That's
It makes
good.
you uncomfortable.
That's so good.
But I mean, the Lord used it for me, you know, and it blessed me to humble myself, because like at the time, like I've struggled with pride before. And so at the time, that was really, it may not have meant much to you, but to me, it meant a lot to be like, I'm
willing to
content.
say this, yeah.
I'm content to not be the face, to not be the one on the stage, and to serve behind the scenes and serve you in a humble manner. And I feel like the Lord did a lot for me in that, to be willing to lay down what everybody else was like, hey man, you should just pursue this. You should pursue lead pastor. This is what you should want. If this is what you want, go get it. And it's like, I'm content with where the Lord has me.
I do think slowness, you could probably say patience, fruit of the Spirit, patience, is a fruit that comes from contentment. If I'm content where I am, I have patience for what the Lord has for me.
I'm not
out in
trying
front.
to get the full growth, full everything right off the bat.
That's right.
Because I mean, all right. So you said earlier, it's like a sign is not chasing all the material things, because that is essentially trying to rush the process, specifically of wealth. Is I want to look wealthy when I'm not actually wealthy. Because I mean, like,
Right.
that's something that that's a character flaw I feel like I see in a lot of people, and it's one of the bigger red flags to me in a person is when they care, like, they're willing to be in credit card debt to wear the shoes that they want, and they're willing to do, like, have no money in their bank account because they're wearing their bank account on their in their wardrobe.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is a sign of I'm trying to chase satisfaction to some degree in material things. I'm trying to at least look something that I'm not, look a part that I'm not.
Yeah. Let the peace of Christ guard your heart. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the peace of Christ guards your heart, you know, from all of these things. And so to me, that's a healthy follower of Christ and a healthy leader that has the peace of Christ in their heart.
For sure.
Not someone who's easily angered or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Goes off on people. Anyways,
Facts,
continue.
facts. No, for
Yeah,
sure.
Sorry.
And then one thing you had mentioned when we were talking about before the like ethics of leaderships, and you said that leaders ought to be motivated by excellent output. And oftentimes, the way to measure excellent output is money. So, like, oftentimes that is a strong measure of something is doing well. You know, so like, how should like a leader manage that tension of pursuing excellence, but in a healthy way? And what if money is the metric?
Yeah, I would say this. Money should be the metric for a for-profit business.
For sure.
So then what's the metric?
Yeah, so let's not pretend that money isn't a tool that the Lord can use, you know?
Yeah.
When business leaders don't use money as the metric of how well their business is doing,
They go out of business.
they're not going to be in business for much longer, and they're going to lose influence. I mean, you know, I certainly think money is a real component of how we measure how well we're doing in a business setting.
For sure.
But ultimately, my intention there wasn't really money, but my intention there was, in that ethic, if you will, is that whatever you do with your hands, you do it as unto the Lord. So your work is worship for the Lord.
Yeah.
And if you're lazy, or if you're working half-heartedly, or if you're sitting on the clock stealing from the guy who's paying you, that's sinful, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's
that's right.
not worship to the Lord. It's displeasing to the Lord, you know? And so I think your work is your worship. And so good leaders want to see that output because it's pleasing to the Lord,
Yeah.
you know?
But how do we balance trying to fight for a healthy or like a strong output without finding our peace and contentment there? Because like you said earlier, it's like when you first took over, you judged health based on how many people were at your large group service. And I do even remember, I think it was early on when you stepped in as the campus pastor, you got some pushback at first because people felt like you were only after the numbers in their small group because they didn't know your heart. They didn't understand your heart. And so it's like you were never actually there. But like when you say, hey, like you should get 15 phone numbers, people take that as if I don't, then Cole thinks I'm a failure and then I'm not actually living up to whatever.
Yeah.
But so like, how do we actually measure success and contentment while also pursuing growth?
Yeah, let's go back to Derek's point here that I think you're making here. What's the motivation? What's the motivation? Is it the love of money? Right? Is the love of money driving you? You know, it's not money for me, and I can speak for a lot of others. It's not money for them either.
Yeah. Sure.
It is the drive and the ambition that the Lord's already out in front of you preparing a way, and that's what's motivating to me, is to go and do great work and have a successful career, if you will. That's the drive, you know? And I think that's honorable. I think the Lord put that in me, you know?
Yeah.
And not to be scared or intimidated by that, but like, oh man, is it okay to want to be successful? Yes. You know what I mean? Like, go and work, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, curse of Adam is work. Redeem it by making it worship, you know? So
Come on.
what I'm trying to
Come
say
on.
is like,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
need
yeah.
to put your hands to work. And I'm going to go a step further. If you don't work, you become lazy.
For sure.
And lazy is a cousin to sexual immorality too. That's a different conversation for a different day. But put your hand to work and go worship the Lord, you know? And
For sure.
I think that's redeeming for the curse of Adam.
Yeah.
All right, wait. Yeah, the fire.
There's a lot there.
Yeah,
There's a lot there.
I
There's a
want
lot
to come back
there.
to one point.
There's a lot there.
A few of them.
Yeah.
But so laziness is a cousin to sexual immorality. Break that down.
I believe that you need to set your mind on what's out in front of you. And when you don't set your mind on what the Lord has out in front of you, it wanders like this.
For sure.
And you're looking for anything that will
You're looking
satisfy.
for anything else that will satisfy, that's pleasurable. But when you'll set your mind to the things of God and to the work that's out in front of you, you're locked in,
Yeah.
right? No, I'm locked in to what God has for me at my work and my family. And are we doing devotionals this week? What day? What night? You know? Am I going to the gym to take care of myself this week? What day? What night?
No.
You know?
No, I'm sorry.
Exactly. I love this dude. You know what I mean? You know? Like, am I setting my mind to the work that God has for me?
For sure.
So I do think when you have nothing to do, your mind and your heart wander. And you begin comparing your relationship to somebody else's. Right? And you begin thinking about somebody else.
Man, you ain't even got time to do that when you're
What I'm trying to say.
you're invested in something.
You know what?
I didn't want to say busy because busyness can become a drug.
That's right.
sure.
And
That's
because
right.
it's like
It's
not
good wisdom.
everything is a level of busyness, but it is a level of intensity.
Yeah.
You can have an intense focus sitting with your family, having fellowship with them, or you can feel like that's a burden and not something. Because I feel like that's always something you've done well, is that you grind when it comes to work, but you are also present as a father. And you rarely see that in a man. It's either they work really hard or they're a straight up bum. And like the one word that would never be used to describe you as a bum. How do you feel about bums? No,
But no, that's bro.
They're going to harvest what they sow. That's how I feel about
Hey,
them.
bro. But I think that's an excellent point, bro. If you're not doing anything with your hands, then you're gonna find something to do with.
That's a good way to say it. That's a better way to say
like
it.
That's really
a good way to say
what
it.
it is, man. If your hands aren't busy doing what the Lord called you to do, your hands are gonna be busy doing something else.
Yeah. And I think there is, call me conservative, I don't really care, but there is an innate desire in a masculine man to work and provide and have ambition and to drive.
For sure.
And I think that's godly.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, so I just, matter of fact, Proverbs says poverty is not godliness. Let's not sit here and pretend that, oh, woe is me. And the Lord's pleased with that, you know?
For sure.
So, matter of fact, the Lord actually gives you the parable of the talents. Jesus himself says, put yourself to work.
And be faithful
You know what I
with
mean?
little,
Like,
and you'll be faithful with much.
That's right.
But there is a level of multiplication when it comes to faithfulness.
Yes.
That if you aren't multiplying, you're not faithful.
You said at
Like-
least put it in bank and we get interest. Like Jesus was concerned about the interest at least. You
Hello?
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Jesus had a savings account at least, man. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you
And he was
spending all your
savvy
money.
in taxes too. Pay the tax man.
Thanks, you know, do that.
Do you do that? No, I'm no, I'm playing. We're not trying to get you canceled.
But no, that's real, bro. I think that's important for us, especially as when you call yourself a Christ follower, you're a leader. Because you're going to be a leader to, because once people know that you're a Christ follower, they're going to look.
No, bro, everybody's a leader.
Everybody is a leader, but I'm saying even more for the Christ followers, like, you love Jesus? Oh, I'm about to watch you now. Oh, how you move? Because if you move like that, then I can move like that because I follow Jesus too. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, bro, when you wear that name of Christ, you got to move a certain way. And I think that's important that we do find that balance.
Christians get mad when they get called hypocrites because they live a different way while they claim Christ. Yet that is quite literally the definition of what a hypocrite is. It's like you are saying you're a Christian, so move like it, act like it. Like we are wearing the name of Christ like a last name.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not. So when you misrepresent and don't reflect him well, the world will see Christ differently as a result of your witness and the way you work. Which is,
Because it'd be Christians be like, oh, I love Jesus, you know, but I don't go to church because they're just full of hypocrites. And it's like, oftentimes those people are the same people that are living hypocritical lifestyles when it comes to living not in accordance to what Jesus calls them to. And so it's like, it's just the pot calling the kettle black. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
And hear me carefully too. My intention here is not to be critical of believers' lives and how they live. My intention here is to help encourage and push you further than where you're currently at. And so that's my motivation is, look, if you see that you're struggling with whether anxiety or whatever else we've talked about, laziness or, you know, and you know, you see some poor qualities in your own life, I'm not trying to criticize the listener, but I am trying to push the listener.
But some people hear anything that criticizes the way they live and they take it as a critique.
An offense,
And
yeah.
it offends them.
Yeah.
How do we make sure as people we don't fall down that rabbit hole?
And I want to give a little bit more add to that question in the aspect of like, you can use the example of how when you would encourage us to get 50 numbers or have X amount of people in your life group, like how did you rationalize that and want to balance that well as far as encouraging somebody, challenging them in a healthy way, but it still may not be perceived well?
Yeah, I think there are a weakness of mine is not all like communicating in a way where I don't give enough disclaimers.
And then you
just a
give
weakness of
people too
mine.
much space to.
Or to presume, I mean something that I'm not trying to say. You know,
right.
My motivating factor to go there to push small group leaders was Ephesians
To benefit them,
was to
yeah.
do the work of the ministry,
sure.
Right.
not to add unnecessary
Burden,
Yeah, you know, and I probably matured in that as time went on,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
but yeah. So, what was the question again?
I don't remember what we said.
remember. What was it?
It was kind
Again?
of like just finding that balance between like encouraging people and like challenging them.
Oh,
and
yeah,
and then people get offended.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the offense. Yeah, I would say this, and this is not a popular opinion. My wife doesn't like when I say this. Okay,
Okay.
she doesn't like this.
I'm excited.
Keep telling the truth.
Yeah.
If it offends you, I'm sorry. You know, and sometimes I'm not trying to presume that everything is so clearly absolutely true. You know what I mean? That's not what I'm trying to imply either. But I mean, you know, if it's clear that you need contentment in your life, I'm going to tell you the truth. If it offends you, that's not me offending you, you know?
Right.
The truth of that situation is offending you, you know? So I'm not in the camp of trying to placate or not say things that are true. And honestly, we've become a little too soft. We've become a little too soft. Okay? And listen, there needs to be kindness
Yeah.
Sure.
and
There's
meekness
time for
and humility. I'm not trying to presume, right, that these things aren't real fruits of the Spirit and gentleness. But when we compromise, truth,
And say it was because we're being gentle. Yeah.
or we don't say the whole picture,
It's tough, bruh.
you know?
Case in point, at school, bruh, that my principal, she would sometimes get on the intercom, and one time we had a bad thing with attendance, where teachers weren't taking attendance. And she got on the intercom, the whole square. Teachers, I'm tired of y'all not taking attendance. Y'all are not doing it, and it's irresponsible, and I'm going to write you up if you are not taking attendance. Teachers were enraged.
That's the truth.
Exactly. And I'm like, I take attendance.
Yeah.
So if you're...
Wait, they were mad for being called out publicly?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's like, which I understand, you know, and you don't want to look bad in front of the students, and but it's like, bro, if you're not taking attendance, like you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And so like we have to take a level of ownership and maturity as the one who's submitting to leadership.
Yes.
To be willing to accept that. And also trust the heart of the person that you're...
That's right. In that case, she's
Under.
not trying to embarrass anybody, man.
No.
She's just trying to get excellent output.
Because they didn't listen the first time.
you know, the
You know?
email didn't work.
Yeah, and then I can already hear the counter argument. Well, maybe she should have had a teachers only meeting, and she should have said it quietly. And if she, you know, you're presuming she didn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Or why is your proposed solution better than her solution? It's just kind of like, just let people challenge you, and don't be so easily offended.
Well, and that's something that I think a lot of times people who are not leading, all they do is judge the decisions of their leader without actually understanding the context for the decision. And I literally remember sitting in this building questioning things that you would do, things that you would say, and be like, I don't understand why
Clothes
Cole
he
did
would
that.
wear.
Like, why? Wait, what?
The clothes he would wear.
But yeah, I still question that. But but like we judge and critique leadership without understanding the context, which is probably a sign of insecurity on our part. But so how can a person actually like not fall into that cycle and actually give their leaders grace?
Well, there's two things here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talk to leaders first, and then talk to those who are maybe critical of leaders. Leaders are at risk. That's one of my ethics. They are at risk of negative feedback.
Yeah.
And if you're going to say something to a group of people and try and encourage them, you're going to have negative feedback. You know, you're going to have some people that are critical of you.
Yeah.
You're signing up for that.
Yeah.
So don't feel bad for yourself.
No, for sure. Bro, so I think this is funny.
mean-
I'll let you finish that. Yeah. 'Cause
No,
you,
it's okay.
You had 2 points, right?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you keep going.
If it pertains to that point, then yeah.
Yeah, so we had our like leader day in January, like right before
At
coming
Southeastern.
back. Before coming back. And so I wanted to try something new to understand what people were really thinking and hear their opinions that they weren't willing to say to our face. And so I made an anonymous Google form while we were at Leader Day.
That's good.
And asked for their basically unwarranted opinions on everything we were doing. What are we doing wrong? What do you not like? What is leadership doing poor? All of these things. And then, so like they fill it out while the staff's in another room, we're in a conference room, reading them as they come in. We don't know who's submitting them. We just know they're our leaders. And at one point I was like, dang, bro, I feel like I got punched in the gut. And I was like, I asked for this.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I know these things because some of them were things that needed to be addressed. Some of them were them critiquing us without the proper context. But like, it helped me as a leader also to drop my insecurity at the door and be like, look, if I believe what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, if somebody don't like it, like,
Yeah.
what am I going to do?
Austin, you're not perfect.
Yeah, it's true.
Not far from it.
Far.
This dude. And that's perfectly acceptable, you know?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I just think, yeah, you can get caught up of like, if I'm a leader, I want to lead this organization. I've got to be perfect. I got to have everything together. I got to be like on it. And I was like, well, not necessarily, you know? Right. So I just, a little pressure off the leaders out there. One, you're voluntarily signing up for it, and so you expect it. But two, take a little bit of weight off yourself too. I mean, just calm down, relax. At the end of the day, you're just trying to help people. And if that's your intent, great. You know what I mean? If not, then you probably shouldn't be a leader. But nonetheless, you'll eventually get weeded out, you know? I mean, truthfully. People start following you if you're not, have sincere intent. But those that are following leaders and critical of them, I think and you mentioned this word, have grace for them. I think it's important for you to understand that it's possible. It's possible. They have a perspective that you don't. Possible. I'm not saying it's true all the time.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying it's possible they have more data than you.
Yeah.
It's possible they've seen more of whatever you're critical of than you. It's possible that they just know more.
It's almost certain.
About this particular thing that you're critical of them than you. And a man who criticizes someone else is likely not trying to do what the person he's criticizing of. Because if he's trying to mimic the leader and be a leader and offer wise counsel to his employees, then he'll empathize a little more when someone says something the wrong way slightly, or maybe they're making a decision they didn't fully agree with. So I don't know. I have a little more grace, but also humble yourself. It is all right that you don't see eye to eye on everything your leader sees.
Yeah. And
in what world is that not okay? You know what I mean? Like,
and that's
totally fine.
I feel like the Lord showed me that recently when it came to like politics and the election. And it's like There may be like there's some things that I may not agree with or see like wait why, but it's like hey bro, they might know more than me. I mean they probably do a better job.
Well, they definitely do. They do this for a living.
You know, it's different. But I have to humble myself. Why do I think I have the best way of doing every single thing?
That's right.
I mean, that's like
that's human nature, isn't it?
You know, but
we all believe we're the best thing ever. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, I mean, you've even said you feel like you could be a better general manager than a lot of NFL people, which
that's a fact.
But like, I feel like a lot of times, like it's like a dumb example, but like in sports, we always like come up with all these mock trades for our sports team.
Right.
They're like, I don't understand why our general managers don't call about Tom Brady, and it's like, don't you think they might have done it?
That's right.
And got declined already.
That's
you know,
right.
like,
We
don't know. But we out here being couch potatoes, criticizing these people who are actually doing it without all the proper facts. And because it's so much easier to be critical of leadership rather than to actually be a leader.
Yeah.
It's so easy to be critical. It's so hard to lead.
And go ahead.
And it's sinful.
Uh-oh.
So
take it.
You know, it's it's sinful to overly criticize and have a cynical spirit.
Yeah.
It's sinful. Rather than to encourage and bring peace and bring patience and gentleness and kindness and help and encouragement to the situation.
One of them brings division, the other one brings unity.
That's right.
For sure. And I had to learn that as well in marriage. That like, man, if something my wife did was like rude or to me, I was like, I had to think like, her wasn't to be rude intentionally. She loves me more than anybody else on the planet. why am I not giving her the benefit of the doubt? You know what I'm saying? Why am I being overly critical of every little thing she does and not trusting her love for me? You know what I'm saying? And I felt like that was an immature aspect with that I was dealing with, in that, like, man, why am I thinking the worst of the person I love the most? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just...
Yeah, I heard a wise man once say, going to marriage real fast, and we'll come back to you, Austin, but I heard a wise man once say, the goal of the devil is to bring those who are not married into unity before it's intended to happen. And the goal of the devil is to bring those that are in unity, married, out of unity before it's intended to happen. Meaning, yeah, there is certainly a clear strategic plan, against your marriage, and to sow division against your marriage. Go a step further, there's a clear strategic plan to sow division against your organization. You've got to acknowledge that this isn't accidental, or a coincidence, or no, man, we need to be sensitive to what the Lord's trying to accomplish before we speak critically.
And I think one, for the follower, like for the person who is critical of their leader, it's kind of simple. Like, hey, how about you have a conversation instead of just be critical?
That's right.
But two, so for what would you say to the leader who is dealing with a lot of critical people? How did you specifically navigate that, knowing that people are talking behind your back about your leadership?
Yeah, listen well.
Okay.
You might be wrong.
Yeah.
Listen well. Do surveys.
Yeah.
Love that you did a survey.
Yeah.
Seriously. We do surveys in our organization as well. Listen well to your people. Careful, leader. If you're going to pretend that you're going to listen well and send surveys, it's better you don't if you're not going to listen to the feedback.
Thanks.
So you'll sow even more.
I said all these things and then listen.
That's right. That's exactly right. And so careful. If you're going to ask for feedback, be ready to listen to the feedback.
That's good.
And once you've got the feedback and you've got wise counsel, matter of fact, I think Proverbs said there's security in the abundance of counselors. So if you want security in your organization, put wise people around you.
Yeah.
Wise, godly people around you, you know? And so I think once you get the feedback and you've got an abundance of counselors, then I think you can filter the feedback, maybe you and your staff, for example, and see what needs to be addressed and what doesn't, what's just,
they don't understand.
That's right. And so that'd be the feedback for the leader.
Yeah.
Is humble yourself.
Yeah.
Because ultimately you're trying to model you're trying to model what you expect.
Because both of those things are coming from a lack of humility.
Right.
The follower is critical because
That's right.
they're prideful, thinking that they could do it better.
That's right.
And then the leader's not listening to the follower because they think they're doing it better.
Because they know better.
Yeah.
No. And you need to be careful. You will develop a culture off of what you model. You know what I mean? And don't time out here. Don't just model something fake, in a fake way. Be sincere and genuine. But the culture of your organization is going to come from the person at the top.
Yeah.
So probably wise for you to look at some blind spots that you have as a leader. And probably wise for you to examine, okay, how am I? And to become extremely self-aware. And to me, that's critical for a leader. Yeah.
I'm sure. Because I've done the same survey with my students at the end of every semester. Like, I asked, I'd be like, hey, man, what do y'all feel like I did well as a teacher? What did I do poorly? What did you like? What did you not like? And stuff like that. And then I put it on the board, too. Like, it's anonymous, and I'll put it on the board for the whole class to see, like, what everybody thought, and we talk about it. And then when somebody says something negative, the kids be like, oh, my gosh. And it's like, if I was going to be ready for the positive comments, I need to be ready for the negative feedback as well.
Yeah.
And to be able to take that humbly and be like, bro, if I get defeated by the negative comments, then I probably wouldn't be able to handle the positive comments. That if somebody's saying something bad about me just kills me and kills my confidence, that if somebody praised me, I'd probably get too prideful. That it goes in both. Like, pride can work from both angles. That negative things can kill you, and then positive things can well you up too much, where you well up too much pride within you as well.
Agreed. And I think leaders need to be mindful and not to also chase positive feedback.
You're just looking for reinforcement.
That's right. Careful not to look for yes men in your life.
Yeah.
Careful. You know what I mean?
Yes, man.
I'm not sure yes men would be considered an abundance of counselors.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure,
so just be mindful of that too as a leader, of not just, man, I've got this staff and they all love and adore me and practically would do anything I ask them to do. It's like, Hold on. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
for sure.
Like,
Yeah.
where's the wise counselor here who will
Yeah.
tell you something that he doesn't like? You know?
No, I mean, that's like for me, I know if I do something stupid, Julia is going to tell me I did something stupid.
1,000%. Keep on, Julia.
Yeah. Like every single time.
Yeah.
And like Matthew does too. And it's like, so I appreciate that.
Wise counselors.
Yeah. Because
she go call me out.
that's wives' job.
Yeah,
They
facts.
gonna call you out if you didn't ask for it, nothing.
That's right. Yeah. With the eye roll, too,
You know that?
And a little bit more sass than you would
Hey,
like.
chill. No, that's right. I mean, we did the same thing yesterday, man. I was on the phone with Austin. I was dialoguing about some stuff, and I was like, Austin, all right, like what you've been telling me has been, it's a little too encouraging. All right, be real with me. Tell me what I need to hear.
Yeah.
And he did, and it was hard, of course, to receive, but it's like, man, thank you for that. I need more people to like do that in my life, to challenge me, to call me out where I like, man, so that I can grow and be more of what God called me to be.
It's a red flag when a leader is at the tippity top and everyone underneath him adores, and I don't want to use the word worships them because that's not what I mean, you know,
for sure.
but adores them. It's a red flag.
Why?
Yeah, I think that person needs to be careful to make sure they have other people in their life, not because they're doing inherently anything wrong, you know what I mean, but just be careful of, man, you better find some wise counselors in your life.
Sounds like a cult. Everybody literally follows him blindly.
It
And whatever
happens.
he says goes.
It happens.
You know.
And it could be a healthy organization and not a cult, where you just adore the leader, know.
Yeah.
But that leader just needs to be mindful of, the people here in my organization. Maybe I cannot be, maybe they're not my dearest counselor. That's what I'm trying to say,
For sure. And then I already know that you have it because, man, one thing you used to say every so often when we would talk about hard things within the ministry, and you'd be like, I really want y'all to hear my heart. Like,
That's right.
You'd
Yeah.
preface it.
What's a weakness of mine?
Stolen that line.
Yeah.
Yeah, like hear my heart. And it's like, oh,
My heart,
somebody's
not my
definitely
words.
called you out at some point, so like
Yeah.
wise counsel, and they're like, maybe you should say this. This might help you out in it being received better. Just a little preface. And somebody obviously maybe called that out in you or challenged you, encouraged you to do that.
Thanks,
And-
Pierce Rivera.
Oh, for real, it was Pierce.
Yeah.
Because you have to say that. And that,
In a healthy way.
I think that was beautiful.
He probably didn't even remember that,
Yeah. I think
But
that's
nothing but love,
beautiful to be
you know?
able to have someone and have people in your life to do that, because now you're able to model that. And now I do that as well. I'll be like, hey, I want y'all to hear my heart. You know what I'm saying? I don't know the best way to say this, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hear my intention, not my words.
yeah.
So are you the best Chi Alpha campus pastor in UL history?
No, dude, you kidding me?
There's only been 2, bro.
Well, it's been 4, but yeah. It's different for a different day. Just relax. You gotta learn your UL Kava history, okay? But
Oh, that's right. There has been. So what number are you? Where do you rank yourself?
I don't know, probably 3rd, maybe 2nd or 3rd. I mean, Eric Truell's the GOAT. Let's just get that out there. Oh, my bad. Eric Truell's the GOAT. Let's get that out there. You know,
Okay.
For sure.
So what are you?
I don't know. I don't know the others.
He the kid.
Yeah.
That's a baby goat.
Yeah.
As someone who's served over and like has dealt with us, what do you believe there are things that we can grow in as individuals?
Y'all.
Yes.
Believe that others are better than you. But you already have that realization.
But like, bro, what if they're not?
I'm
What
not
if they're
gonna lie, I
not better
struggle
than
with
you?
I think, let me rephrase that.
Uh-huh.
Believe that others can be more effective than you.
Okay.
Because how you articulate something is ultimately arbitrary.
For sure. For sure.
We prefer different communication styles,
Yeah.
right? I'll offer an example, and I mean this, but nothing but love. Alex Rodriguez, very scripted in how he preaches. I love it.
Oh, really?
I love it.
Oh, wow.
I think he's one of the best. Someone else may not.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Not
for
that I've heard people not like Alex Rodriguez. That's not my point.
Yeah.
But my point is that I like the scriptedness of it.
Yeah.
He's effective.
Yeah.
So
Every word has purpose.
every word is well crafted and prepared.
Yeah.
So it's arbitrary for me and you to debate if he's better at communicating than you or me. It's more important, is he effective? So when you're thinking of a student or a coworker, are they effective? And I think you have to give people an opportunity to, in this case, preach every week at a Thursday Night Live to develop a craft and become more effective.
Yeah.
You've got to give people an opportunity to lead a lesson for them to become more effective
Yeah,
or whatever it is in your organization. And so I think it's just a little arbitrary to say I'm better, and it's poor leadership. I mean, it just is. You've got to develop people.
Of course, you're better right now because
Yeah.
you haven't raised them up to be better than
And
you.
you're presuming that you're more better as well.
More better.
More better?
Yeah,
You're presuming that you mow better than them.
Well, that is probably. I feel like you would say that's a sign of poor leadership is when you're not putting people in a position to grow. If you are the best at everything in your organization, then you have led poorly. Would you agree with that?
I would argue you don't have an organization. It's you.
You have a bunch
as
of
individual.
servants.
It's
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
Yeah,
for
it's you.
sure.
It's your business. It's you. You're the service tech or whatever it is. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I want to float something after.
Yeah, it's kind of the old school line of, you know, people working quote unquote in their business as a trade skill, you know, whether it be they're making cabinet doors or, you know, whatever the
Yeah.
trade is,
Yeah.
and being a leader in their business. Yeah, you can do both, you know,
yeah,
you can
no,
do
for
both. Yeah.
Okay, now do Austin.
Oh yeah, I just did you. Okay.
Yeah.
What was yours again? Yours was don't think you're better. Yeah, that's right. Okay, hold on. Austin. Move slower.
Okay.
Speak slower.
What you mean? Like, just like in the way I communicate?
Let your words count.
Let my words count.
Just let your words count.
Huh?
Yeah.
4.
Oh,
Let
there
your
we
communication style be pointed.
go. Yeah. No, I feel that.
Yeah. And I think it's
That's something I've been actually working on. Because, like, I mean, since I edit all the videos and I realize how many words I cut out when I'm making a clip, I'm like, why didn't I just say that in the first place?
yeah, and it's one thing to be on a podcast, but even when
sure.
you're face to face with somebody and you're trying to articulate something, I can't even give a good example right now, you know,
Yeah.
but you're trying to articulate a point about their small group or whatever, you know,
Yeah.
and just be pointed, clear,
Yeah.
you know.
No, I feel that.
Make sure. I think it's wise for leaders to have clear communication.
Because I've seen you do that, and because you'll give like arguments, and then you'll be like, "Well, there's this, and then there's this," and
Argue
you're
with
like,
myself.
and like you, and you like because you try. I think you try so hard to be gentle, like and like you kind of force the gentleness a little bit, and that you're like
Because I'm so not gentle by nature.
exactly, and so it's
I relate.
because you
Yeah.
don't want to be too direct and hurt their feelings. That sometimes it's like you beat around the bush a little bit to try to get to the point.
Yeah.
Whereas I see, okay, for sure.
I think I've learned that too, man. I'm not, you know, trying to pretend that I haven't gone through growth as well.
Yeah.
Learning to be a little bit more calculated in what you say, when you say it, how you say it, who do you say it to.
Facts.
You know, is it really that important that I say this? Probably not. Let me not.
Last question as we close up. So, if you could go back to Cole, how old are you?
31.
31.
32 this week.
If you
by
could
the
go
way.
back.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Happy early
happy
birthday,
birthday.
Thank you.
Old man. If you could go back to Cole 10 years ago ish, graduating college, stepping into a lot of leadership forms, what would be your advice to him?
The first thing that pops in my head is work harder, work faster. I don't know why.
Okay. Why? Like,
He said he doesn't
yeah,
know.
shut
Yeah,
the hell up.
I don't know. My advice to myself 10 years ago would be work harder, work faster. And I think I developed a stride maybe in the last 5 years. And I wish I'd have had that stride 5 years before.
Of working.
I'm just working, man. Enjoy
Yeah.
what you do, dude, you know? And that's the first thing that comes to my mind. Yeah. I would probably, I don't know. I feel like the Lord's just been overwhelmingly good to me.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot that we all have regret. Like, oh man, I wish I would have, did something differently. Of course, you know what I mean? Who doesn't, But the Lord's just been overwhelmingly good to me. Mm-hmm. And in a sense where it's like, Lord, you've got to calm down. Like, why? And I'm serious.
Yeah, no, that's
and it's
good
just,
problem to have.
yeah, I just feel like he was more good to me then than he should have been, and he's more good to me now than he should have been.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. No, that's good.
But
good.
yeah,
Man, thank you. We appreciate you, man.
Much love, dude. It was
been
fun.
Awesome conversation. We miss you, dog. Really miss you for real.
So when are you guys planting a church?
I'm waiting on him. I'll quit.
He said he told Scott Martin.
E. Scott Martin?
Or no, not Scott Martin.
Scott Holmes?
That dude's like dead to us. I'm sorry.
Hey, bro. E. Scott Martin, baby. You keep doing the work of the ministry out there.
Hey.
You're blameless. I see you, Scott. Keep going.
Scott Holmes. He told Scott Holmes that that was something
This
we
dude's
wanted
dead
to
to
do.
us. E. Scott Martin, I hope you listen to this, bro. Ain't nothing but love. You keep doing you. They did you wrong. All right, here we go.
That's facts though.
Yeah, it's
but-
fact. Tell the truth.
What was I saying?
Scott Holmes.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
He told Scott Holmes like, hey, like we might plan a church one day. Now I feel like Scott Holmes is gonna be every time I see him. Hey, is that church gonna be AG?
Yeah.
I don't know, sir.
Hey, bro, I'm just waiting. The moment you do, I'm quitting the same day. Same day.
All right, and we end every episode with, I'll say, and as always, go encounter the kingdom of God, and then we'll all point, that camera's dead, so we'll just point at your camera and say everywhere you go. All right?
I say everywhere you go.
So I'm going to say, and as always, go encounter the kingdom of God, and then we're all going to say everywhere you go.
Okay.
Why are you confused?
Okay.
All right, and as always, go encounter the kingdom of God everywhere you go.